And hello again, boys and girls. This is your favorite judge, Judge Soldati, your favorite wolf. And I want to talk to you real briefly about constitutional rights. Now, Judge Cronlin had mentioned something about a constitution. A constitution is an agreement among those who want to be governed as to what rights they will have and how they will structure their government. And a right is a freedom. And those are the freedoms that are going to be protected by law. Now, before I get into the specific rights that I want to talk to you about, which are the 5th, 6th, and 7th Amendments, I want to suppose for a moment that you're playing on a playground, and a teacher who is monitoring the yard comes in and tells you that you're now being punished because another student said that you hurt them. And this other student is the teacher's favorite student and doesn't like you very much. So the teacher tells you to sit out recess today and the rest of the week. And you have no idea what the teacher is talking about, but she won't let you back out into recess until you apologize to this other teacher's favorite pupil. Does that seem fair to you? Shouldn't you be able to know what she's talking about? Shouldn't you be able to tell why you didn't do whatever she thinks you did? Shouldn't you or someone on your behalf be able to question the other student? Shouldn't you be able to have a teacher who is not friends with the other student decide what actually happened? Shouldn't you be able to defend yourself without the teacher starting off thinking you're guilty already? Well, our forefathers who started this country more than 230 years ago certainly thought that these were important rights to have, so they included them in what are called the Bill of Rights as part of the Constitution. And the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. And I would like to talk to you today about about 3 of those amendments, the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th Amendments. Your teacher should have a copy of these amendments for you. So let's begin with the 5th Amendment. And that's up here on the board. The 5th Amendment covers a number of topics and issues that including grand jury, double jeopardy, self-incrimination. You've heard, I plead the 5th. Or due process or eminent domain. The first part of the amendment talks about a grand jury, and that's a jury that decides whether or not the trial will even be held. They look at all of the evidence and decide whether a person should be charged with a crime. The next section protects a person from being tried over and over for the same crime. This is called double jeopardy. Perhaps the most famous part of the 5th Amendment is the right not to testify against yourself during trial. And that's when we hear people saying, I'm pleading the 5th or I'm taking the 5th. The government must present witnesses and evidence to prove that a crime occurred and cannot force someone to testify against themselves. You've probably heard on TV something like, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law when they arrest somebody. This statement is called a Miranda warning. And police are required to tell this to people before they question them as part of the 5th Amendment. This amendment also protects a person's right with due process of law. And this means that any citizen charged with a crime will be given a fair trial that follows certain defined procedures in trial. And then the last section deals with what's called eminent domain. And that means the government can't just take your property without paying you a just amount for it. The 6th Amendment is also up there, and this has several different sections to it as well. It provides a number of rights. We want to make sure someone gets a fair trial. That includes a speedy trial and a public trial and an impartial jury and notice of what the charges are against you, confrontation of witnesses, and the right to a lawyer. So the first requirement of the 6th Amendment is you have a right to a speedy trial. The Constitution doesn't say how fast that has to be, but you can't just sit there languishing in jail waiting for your trial. The government has to move it along. You also have a right to a public trial, and this is to keep the government from having secret trials away from the eyes of the public. And this happened under the British rule more than 230 years ago, and our founding fathers did not want this to occur under this new government. We also have a right to an impartial jury. We don't want this teacher who's friends with this witness deciding your fate. Instead, we will pick 12 people from this community who are unbiased, and they will decide what happened. And that's why lawyers in a criminal case get to ask questions of the jury to see if they are in fact unbiased. The notice of accusation requirement requires that the person be told what they're charged with. And without this, the government could lock people up for an extended period of time without ever telling them why they're being locked up. You also have the right to confront and cross-examine witnesses. That means these people have to come into court and say what they saw, and you or your attorney can actually ask them questions to see if what they saw or what they think they saw is in fact accurate. And the last part guarantees the defendant a lawyer or assistance of counsel. And if a person cannot afford a lawyer, then the government will pay for one free of charge. And these lawyers are called public defenders.